This is 5 Live Formula One with Jenny Gow.
Hello and welcome to 5 Live Formula One. It is our coverage of qualifying. We have the next hour on the clock, which hopefully means we are going to see some spectacular running, because I can tell you, the rain, it still cometh down. It's still freezing cold. The locals here are complaining about how cold it actually is and how wet it is. Tomorrow the sun will come, but for now, it is going to be the qualifying that I think Jack Nicholls and Jack Aitken, Formula One reserve driver for Williams, have been dreaming of, because it's Montreal, Canada, and this is our theatre of dreams, isn't it, Jack?
Looking forward to this. It's going to be a real challenge for everybody out there with these sort of permanently wet conditions, because I can't remember the last time we had a qualifying session, and I'm sure it'll be like last week is the answer, but where it was sort of wet all the way throughout. We get a lot of wet to dry. I can't remember a sort of Q3 fight in wet conditions recently. Obviously, hashtag BBC F1, let me know how wrong I am, but yeah, I'm looking forward to this, and we'll see what transpires.
So, Jack Aitken, tell me, what are the drivers going to be feeling right now? Because qualifying is high stakes on a normal day, but in these conditions, this raises it another notch, does it not?
Definitely. I think you're going to have a few nervous drivers down there, because they didn't get a lot of laps in FP3 in these conditions, and the track, the people that did get laps in were just complaining all the time how low grip it is, how greasy it was. Latifi saying he was nearly going to be crashing at every corner at one point because he felt like he was on the wrong tyre. So it's very challenging conditions, and it's going to be about who can get comfortable with the walls and the very slippery curbs around this track.
Spa 2021 was wet, wasn't it? When Russell put it on the
22?
On the front row. 22 was it?
It's probably going to be wet. No, we're in 22.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
What year is it? Where are we?
After last year's kerfuffle at Spa, yeah, it was a disastrous weekend, wasn't it, for the weather? But look, tomorrow should be dry, and that gives a window of opportunity, however small it may be, for Charles Leclerc. He has taken new power unit elements, which means he will start from the back of the grid. And Nicholls, what are we expecting to see then for this hour's session? Because he's been on pole 6 out of 8 times, but that it's irrelevant now, isn't it? He's clearly not going to go for pole or get pole.
No, I'm interested to see what he does, actually, because there's I can't see any point in him doing anything, to be perfectly honest with you. Obviously, doing a lap in order to qualify, but getting knocked out in Q1 seems fine. I don't know, especially because of the wet conditions. If it was dry, I would say maybe he'd still go out and learn stuff. But you're always taking a gamble, kind of any time you go out in the wet. If it's dry tomorrow, then there's no point taking it. So if you end up doing 15 or 16 laps in the wet conditions, you're just risking it more and more. And I can't quite work out what we'll see Leclerc do here today. We're about to find out.
We are. The cars are going to go out on track in just a couple of moments' time. In fact, I can see from where I'm standing, the Alfa Romeo is heading out. In fact, both Alfa Romeos are heading out. They're on the full wet tyres. So Jack Nicholls, qualifying's about to get going. 5 cars go out in this first part. Over to you.
Yep. So about 90 seconds till the session begins. An amazing stat that I heard earlier. Since 2007, only Hamilton and Vettel have poles in Montreal, apart from 2014, when Nico Rosberg was on pole. Apart from that, every single pole in Montreal has been Hamilton or Vettel since 15 years ago. That's mad.
Just goes to show how much they've dominated the sport in the last decade between them, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But usually you get a sprinkling of a bit more of a Rosberg somewhere, or a bit more of a Bottas somewhere, but alas.
Very true.
Alas. Who's more likely to get pole position today, Vettel or Hamilton? Vettel's quite good.
Question. Yeah, it's a harder question than you'd think, isn't it? The Aston Martins, both of them have been looking pretty strong in dry and wet conditions, has to be said. And the Astons were 2 of the cars who did probably some of the most laps in FP3 this morning with the wet conditions. So they're well prepared for this. Hamilton, he'd have to pull out something really special to be on pole today.
Certainly would. Well, the cars are firing up, about to head out onto the circuit. Lando Norris was very impressive looking very impressive in that wet qualifying at Spa until he hit the wall at Eau Rouge and Raidillon. And he makes his way towards the end of the pit lane. Rain still coming down. Everybody going out on the full wet tyres. Really interesting to see what the track conditions are like. Session is underway. For those of you syncing up with the television, 17 minutes and 52, 51, 50, 49 seconds left on the clock. And out they go onto the circuit. Bottas and Zhou, Russell and Hamilton making their way onto circuit now in the Mercedes. Leaving the pit lane also, Jenny, is Max Verstappen.
Yeah, and it's worth noting he wasn't particularly comfortable in that car in the first practice session of the day. Yesterday, absolutely supreme. It looked like he was unbeatable. But today, he lost the rear end. He was sliding around all over the place. So I think it's worth noting with anticipation what he can do. We know he's only had one pole so far this season. It's not proved a speciality, but there's an open goal there with Charles Leclerc not being able to... well, unlikely to be able to put the car on pole. It's worthless if he does, because he starts from the back tomorrow. So let's see who can make the most of this penalty shootout in a way.
This is wet. This is wet.
Yeah, I was just about to say there's a lot more spray coming up from the cars than we saw in FP3. The cars will clear water as they go around, but right now the conditions look terrible. I think
if it was race time, you'd be feeling this is a bit sketchy and maybe not ready to go racing. I think we're qualifying because everyone's spread out a little bit more. You're not racing wheel to wheel. It's not quite as treacherous, but in terms of visibility and the cars around you. But in terms of the track conditions, it does look pretty slippery out there as Max Verstappen comes into the hairpin at turn 10, and then on the power back up towards the chicane at the end of the lap. Full grandstands, everybody in their rain gear, watching the cars head down towards the chicane at the end of the lap. Hamilton just backing off to get a little bit of a gap. That's the one part where the spray could be a bit of an issue.
Yeah, the drivers are going to have to be very careful here as they all back up to try and get their own space to start the lap.
So Lewis plan to get a time on the board nice and early, just with the high risk of yellows and reds.
And a very good point from Bono there, Lewis's engineer. With the conditions being so difficult, there's a very strong chance that we're going to see yellows and reds here. And if you're one of the top guys, such as Verstappen, who we're watching start his first lap now, just get a lap on the board. Get something fairly representative. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just finish the lap, even if you get traffic or make a small mistake, because you never know how early this first session could end.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, even when we saw in Baku, didn't we? Oh, Verstappen so tentative through the second part of turn 4. But in Baku, we saw quite a late red flag. I think that was in Q1, wasn't it? And then everybody had to try and get out the pits with 2 minutes left on the clock, with a minute and a half for an outlap. And a lot of people didn't make it through. Well, it was a bit close for people to make it through. No lap times coming in yet. The first driver on a lap, well, actually, there's a few drivers who have started their lap, and Verstappen is one of them. Bottas has done the fastest first sector, but I think we're going to see a huge disparity in times here with the drivers. Verstappen comes through the middle sector, and he has done 59 seconds, goes very deep into turn 10, and it just looks so treacherous out there for Verstappen. The sound you can hear now is the Dutchman coming towards the chicane at the end of the lap, keeps over to sort of the right-hand side of the circuit, all the way into the braking zone, through the right, hits the curbs, through the left, hits the curbs, and out across the line. And we'll see, I say we'll see as we cut to a camera angle you just can't see. Verstappen comes through, and it's a 1 minute 37.4, which is about 8 tenths slower than George Russell's first lap. A second or so quicker than Zhou. Ocon now slots into third place. Zhou, Bottas, Hamilton, the other 6 drivers to have set a lap time. Vettel now goes third quickest, so it'll take a while for these lap times to shake out, I think.
Yeah, for those of you who aren't watching along as we go through this session, I don't think we can stress how difficult it is to see right now for the drivers out there, especially if they've not managed to get much of a bit of their own clear space on track. It's very much about how much you want to risk it right now. And George Russell up top and clearly feeling pretty confident at the moment. Hamilton, meanwhile, is, well, he's just had his lap time deleted, actually, from the looks of it. Yeah, I was going to say he's down in P10, some seconds away from his teammate. Alonso only 2/10 off. George Russell now just putting in a quick time there.
Yeah, just speaking to a couple of the engineers actually in the lunch break, and they were saying that in weather like this, you've just got to go out and keep on circulating. So they fill the cars up so differently when it comes to fuel loads, because normally you'd fill them up for, you know, an out lap, a push lap, maybe 2 push laps, and then an in lap. But for here, you just chuck a tank full of fuel in there so that they can keep on circulating and make sure that they're out there at all times if they can be, so that you make the most. And if there's a red flag, you're not the ones that suffer. So it's fascinating the different mindset that the teams have to take on when we have a wet session like this.
Verstappen goes to the top of the times, 0.8 of a second ahead of George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, who are second and third. Ocon now slots into second place. Alonso's done the fastest first sector of anyone. Vettel is sixth, Stroll is seventh. Tsunoda, Perez and Zhou are the top 10. And then it's Schumacher, Magnussen, Gasly, Ricciardo and Norris, the 15 drivers that would go through at the moment. Fernando Alonso is fastest in anyone in the first sector, fastest of anyone in the second sector, and it's coming down the back straight now. Here's Hamilton's radio.
Can't see a lot ahead of me.
And Hamilton's saying he can't see a lot ahead of him. Alonso, was that sort of a lift halfway down the straight? Yeah. Looking in his mirrors as he comes into the chicane. So it didn't seem to be too much problem out there for Alonso. The one thing I will say is that the track looks slippery, or very slippery. Not a huge amount of standing water. When we're on board, it doesn't look like there's a huge amount of aquaplaning going on. Not to a sort of impossible level.
No, you can just about see now the dry line is definitely stretching it, but a line where the water is being lifted from the track by the cars. And they're all circulating relatively trouble-free for now, all keeping it on the black stuff, so aquaplaning doesn't seem to be an issue. So it will soon turn to a question of who's going to take the gamble to go on the Inter first.
So Hamilton up into 7th place. Russell just finds another load of time, then splashes through the water at turn 1. There are some puddles actually on the apexes of the corners. Lando Norris has just had a little front left lockup, and that sent him straight on at turns 1 and 2 in the McLaren. But Russell is the quickest driver at the moment, and we're now seeing Sergio Perez, who's 17th at the moment. Oh, back end stepped out big time into turn 1 for Sergio Perez, and Mick Schumacher has got right up on the curb coming into the final chicane, and the wheels plunging down into the puddles. But at the moment, Russell, Sainz, Verstappen, Ocon and Tsunoda are the top 5. Then it's Gasly, Hamilton, Alonso, Schumacher and Ricciardo the top 10. Gasly now improves to go up to second quickest. Perez comes across the line now, and he goes from 17th up into 7th. So eliminated at the moment would be Albon, Stroll, Zhou. Sainz is coming through the final corner. Magnussen and Latifi, the other 2 drivers. Sainz sounds like he's revving it as he comes across the line, and he goes second quickest, but it's like he's, you know, got the clutch in and just giving it some revs. So much is the wheel spin.
Yeah, even in 4th gear, 5th gear, these cars have just got so much torque, and there's so little mechanical grip with the cars now. The wheel spin is something you have to control for a very, very long time, but a lot of people making mistakes in these first laps, either cutting the chicane and having their lap deleted, or having to back out of it themselves because of mistakes. So still got quite a few people who haven't really set what you call a representative time. You know, Albon and Latifi down there struggling a little bit, but we've also got Sainz down in 17th at the moment on 43.1, so he hasn't really put a lap together. Neither have the 2 McLarens, Ricciardo and Norris, 14th and 15th.
Norris comes across the line now. He goes up into 5th position, and Magnussen now is coming across the line, currently 20th. Does he climb up the order? He goes quickest. Does he ever? 1 minute 34.893 for Kevin Magnussen, then sends it into turn 1 and almost runs out wide. It's quite remarkable, really, the differences we're seeing in pace here, and this has got maybe a Q1 or Q2 shock written all over it. Russell's done the fastest first sector of anybody. He's 7/10 up on Magnussen now after the middle sector. So this is going to be a real classic the last laps in this session are going to be the big ones. Ricciardo now goes third fastest, with Ocon in fourth, Sainz in fifth, Gasly, Norris, Verstappen and Perez and Zhou the top 10. Schumacher 11th, Albon now goes into 12th place, 13th is Tsunoda, 14th Hamilton, 15th Alonso, Bottas to the top, a 1 minute 34.811.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah, as you say, it's going to be improving all the way through the session now without too much more rain expected. And the car's just getting quicker and quicker, drivers getting more and more confidence. Russell tops that, takes another 8 tenths out of Bottas to go P1.
1 minute 33.9. Hamilton then goes second fastest. Verstappen then goes 7 tenths quicker than Russell. So a 1 minute 33.2 for Max Verstappen to go fastest. Russell second, Hamilton third, Bottas fourth, Magnussen fifth, Ricciardo sixth. Jenny Gao.
Yeah, I think this is a real opportunity, isn't it, this session, for people who would never fancy themselves and the teams who maybe would expect to be out in the first part of qualifying to just go out there and see what they can do. This, I think, is open for anybody, isn't it?
I mean, seemingly so at the moment. Sainz is 3 tenths up on Verstappen in the middle sector. Fernando Alonso is coming down into the final couple of corners. He is currently 16th and out as it stands, and he's sliding his way through the final chicane. Alonso goes from 16th up to quickest at 1 minute 33.136. Who's going to go quickest next? Will it be Carlos Sainz? Ricciardo goes up into 4th place. Sainz across the line now in the Ferrari. He goes 10th to quickest at 1 minute 32.781. 3 tenths quicker than Alonso. This is nuts. I've never really seen a session like this, I don't think.
Take a breath when you can, Jack. Yeah. It's going to be like this for the next 6 minutes, I think. People coming across the line, improving all the time, and yeah, you really cannot afford to make a mistake on any of these laps now, because if you don't get your last fastest lap in, everyone else is going to improve, and you will tumble down the order and possibly into that elimination zone.
Yeah, absolutely. So less than 6 minutes to go. At the moment, Perez and Tsunoda would be eliminated. We're just getting a replay of Nicholas Latifi coming into turn 1, getting onto the brakes, turning left, and the car goes straight. And he skids right away across the runoff area at turns 1 and 2. Esteban Ocon has had a big right front lockup at turn 3 and gone across the grass on the left-hand side at turn 4, and then managed to continue on his way, but again the car just would not turn there for Esteban Ocon. Across the grass, back onto the circuit. Eliminated at the moment, Perez, Tsunoda, Vettel, Stroll and Latifi. So both Canadians going out as it stands. Perez is fighting his way out of the final corner, and he should jump up the order here a little bit. Only up to 13th. Found half a second compared to Alex Albon, but it's Sainz quickest at the moment. Alonso second, Verstappen third, Russell fourth, Magnussen fifth. Sounding in here is Charles Leclerc. He's currently 8th fastest, so he's doing plenty of running, is Charles Leclerc. With less than 5 minutes to go, he's onto the brakes. Whoop, bit of traffic. One of the Williams at the final chicane. Then out across the line, and Leclerc. Bottas goes up into 6th place. Leclerc goes from 9th up into 7th, 1.4 seconds slower than his teammate Carlos Sainz. Russell has set the fastest first sector of anyone. Zhou goes up into 10th place. Here comes Russell, and he goes 3rd, 3 tenths away from Sainz. So Perez's lap got him out a little bit, but I think he's the big front runner at the moment with 4 minutes and 20 seconds to go, who's a little bit dangerous.
Norris as well is just below Perez in the standings, so also you'd expect him to be able to get up there, especially in these conditions. We're just seeing a replay of him now. Big lock-up on the rear, sending him wide at turns 6 and 7, and then on the next lap straight away locks the front and goes straight on at turn 1. So yeah, it's what we mentioned earlier. He has to get these laps in, because if there's a yellow flag or a red flag now, there's going to be not a lot of time left to set a time.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Less than 4 minutes to go. Pierre Gasly running wide at the hairpin, but he still actually manages to stay in front of Carlos Sainz as he comes back onto the circuit. I think he's now moving out of Sainz's way, but Sainz is actually backed off as well there with 3.5 minutes to go. Down towards the chicane they come. Here's Verstappen's radio.
What's the main limitation?
A free track.
Verstappen being asked what's the main limitation. A free track, he says. Leclerc in 10th place at the moment. Jenny, Verstappen in 4th.
Yeah, it's a question mark, isn't it? Why Leclerc is out there doing so much running, why Ferrari feel the need to do that. So, yeah, it's slightly strange. And Vettel at the moment in the Aston Martin complaining that something doesn't feel right with the rear of the car. He's saying it feels weird on the rear left, like something's broken.
Well, he's currently 15th at the moment, Vettel. He'd be making it through to Q2 just about. Less than 3 minutes to go. Perez is back in the drop zone. He, Albon, Tsunoda, Stroll and Latifi are the 5 drivers that would be eliminated as it stands. But a long way to go in this session and a lot of lap time to find. Ocon now goes up to second quickest at 33.0, taking him just over 2 tenths away from Carlos Sainz, whose lap time in the Ferrari is still holding up. Mick Schumacher's done a pretty decent lap to be 7th quickest in the Haas, 4 tenths ahead of his teammate Kevin Magnussen. Leclerc's done a personal best in the first sector. Gasly has just skipped the chicane and he's 14th at the moment, so he's at risk. He's only going to get one more shot at this, Pierre Gasly. Vettel is in 15th position. Magnussen goes a bit to 6th. Just as I say, Schumacher's lap was good. Magnussen improves and goes ahead. Pierre Gasly almost got it into 8 and 9, but just not quite.
Yeah, he didn't go around the bollard there, so he might get a little bit of a slap on the wrist from the race director, but it's only qualifying, so not a major issue. The teams that I'm surprised, or the team that I'm surprised a bit by is the Astons, both of them in the drop zone when we saw them running fairly strongly in FP3, comparable to the Alpine, who are 2nd and 3rd, and that's quite big in the midfield battle for them.
Vettel's only 300ths away from Pierre Gasly, but Stroll is 2.3 seconds away at the moment. Carlos Sainz saying the track is nearly ready for intermediate tyres. Verstappen and Russell are about to come across the line. Russell comes through ahead and he goes from 5th, remains in 5th. Verstappen goes quickest though, 1 minute 32.219. That's half a second quicker than Sainz, 8 tenths quicker than Leclerc, who's just popped up into 3rd place. Then it's the 2 Alpines of Ocon and Alonso. There is a yellow flag in the first sector with a minute on the clock, so that could scupper, well, that's going to scupper anybody starting a lap right at this moment, and it's Sainz. Sainz has gone straight on down at the right-hander of turn 3, so anyone who's coming across the yellow flag zone here will be in a bit of trouble, and I think there were a few of them. Gasly, Vettel, Stroll, Latifi and Tsunoda's in the pits, so something's happened to Yuki Tsunoda. He is not going to be advancing through. He will start at the back of the, well, second to last once Leclerc's had his penalties applied, but Perez is right on the bubble. The sound you can hear is his wheel spin coming out of the final corner, currently 15th. Does he find enough? Well, he's up to 12th. That should be enough to see him through. That puts Ricciardo into the drop zone now. Puts Ricciardo right on the bubble now in 15th. At the moment it's Gasly, Vettel, Stroll, Latifi and Tsunoda eliminated. Vettel only goes up to 16th place. Frustrating this for Aston Martin considering the pace they've had this weekend. Alonso goes 2nd fastest. Vettel then all but out, I think, because the checkered flag is out now. Gasly only goes 16th. Both AlphaTauris out in the first part of qualifying. Ricciardo manages to improve to get him into 8th place. Norris is in 15th position. We've still got, I think, laps to come in from Stroll and Latifi, but I think broadly speaking, and Stroll doesn't improve, broadly speaking, unless Latifi pulls something out of somewhere, it'll be Gasly, Vettel, Stroll, Latifi and Tsunoda that will be eliminated. Here comes Latifi. He is doing personal bests over the curbs, out of the final corner, sliding a lot, and I don't think he's going to be anywhere near getting through here compared to Lando Norris. Almost 2 seconds away, 1.6 seconds for Nicholas Latifi. So, Gasly out, Vettel out, Stroll out, Latifi out, Tsunoda out. No utterly ginormous shocks. Perez was in the risk zone, but Aston Martin's a bit surprising.
Yeah, very disappointing session for them. It will be interesting to see if anything was wrong with Vettel's car, but Stroll was also struggling. He never looked on the pace there. Shame for Gasly, like you said, and Tsunoda. That's a tough session for AlphaTauri. Albon did well to be up in P14 and go through to Q2, so it's a decent job there. The McLaren of Norris, another one that I was expecting to be up there, and it just wasn't.
Here comes Vettel across the line. Maybe he has got one more lap in him, but he doesn't do anything. 17th, so he wasn't fully out at that point, but just didn't find any pace. So the order at the end of that session, both Canadians out, in fact, and we're just getting a replay of Vettel having a front right lockup coming into the hairpin, and that eliminates him from the running and ends up finishing down the order and out of the session. Gasly out, Vettel out, Stroll out, Latifi out, Tsunoda out. Through will be Verstappen, Alonso, Sainz, Magnussen went 4th quickest at the end, Leclerc 5th, Ocon, Russell, Ricciardo, Bottas and Zhou the top 10, Schumacher, Hamilton, Perez, Albon and Norris the top 15. So Norris just making it through, Albon doing well to make it through, Hamilton not comfortable. Good job from the 2 Alfa Romeos. Russell looks strong, Magnussen impressive, Alpine are good, Verstappen quickest, Jenny.
Yeah, and I have to say, hats off to Kevin Magnussen. He's just pulling his Haas into the pit lane any moment. Why didn't I do that? I'm disappointed with my own ability there, but there we go. It's been a long, cold day. He's not come into the box either yet, but yeah, what a great performance from
mate,
Magnussen.
check the bag. I'm sorry, but we are out.
That can't be. I mean, what was that? So different to this morning. So different. Had no grip. Felt like the rear left was broken, man. Oh, man!
A frustrated Sebastian Vettel there. Do carry on, Jenny.
Yeah, so they have now got Magnussen back into the garage. They're just rolling him back. This is a huge opportunity for a team like Haas to be able to get a really decent result out of it. Lance Stroll just comes in his Aston Martin, and you could hear the disappointment in Sebastian Vettel's voice. At one point he was leading, he was the fastest car in free practice 3, and from that to all of a sudden have nothing. How very odd, how odd it is. And just so you know, I can for the first time all day see a faint outline of a hazy sunshine just above me. The clouds are still covering it, but it does seem to have stopped raining. I'm excited.
Okay. Well, the predictions were that it would end, and that sound you can hear is Pierre Gasly after running wide.
Every time I touch the I must spin. Even now.
Yeah, we can see an issue front left. We can see an issue on the front left.
An issue on the front left for Pierre Gasly. Sainz kind of got an Ocon's way a little bit here.
Did Sainz obstruct you there, Esteban?
Yeah, he came back on the track like a madman.
Probably that.
But it was a yellow flag, Esteban.
yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point.
I'm sorry, but you know, it's very clear. You know, a yellow flag. Be prepared to stop
please.
So, Carlos Sainz Charles Leclerc with a thumbs up to the crowd. So he's done now. He's got through in 8th place, Charles Leclerc, but he's walking down to get weighed. So I don't think he'll be taking part in the second part of qualifying. Jenny, do you have something to say about Yuki Tsunoda?
I do, of course I do, because I was expecting Charles Leclerc to not take a huge part in that qualifying session. He did the whole of the first part of qualifying, but of course Yuki Tsunoda is also taking engine penalties, so he will start from the back of the grid. So when I said, what's going on with Yuki? Of course that's what's going on with Yuki, because he doesn't need to really qualify. But yeah, Charles Leclerc just walking towards us, is waving his hands at the crowd. The crowd are very excited to see him, as you can expect. So yeah, that's the end of his qualifying, and he'll go and get weighed. I'm actually in the weigh garage, which is why I can see this weird scenario of Charles and his trainer walking towards us. They'll thumbs up, a little bit of a wave, and he pops onto the scales. So weird that they always have to get measured, isn't it? Surreal. But there we go, he's getting measured, and he'll get a slip of paper which tells him how much he weighs, and we'll go and give that. Who do they give that to, Jack?
Go straight to the race engineer, because then they'll judge you for how much you've been eating that weekend. No, obviously just to check that the ballast is correct in the car and that everything weighs what it's expected to. They'll check that with the car as well in the evening, just to keep things all spick and span.
So that is Jack Aitken, the Williams reserve driver, alongside myself and Jenny Gow for qualifying for the Canadian Grand Prix, which will be coming up tomorrow evening, night, whatever, here on 5 Live. And we are waiting now for the second part of qualifying to get underway, which is going to happen imminently. And Albon is committing to the intermediates straight away. We'll see whether everybody else does that. Sainz did say towards the end of that session that it's ready for intermediates.
Yeah, of course. There wasn't enough time left in that session, only enough time for a lap or two when Sainz made that that call to the team. Not enough time to fire up the intermediates, which do need to get some temperature built up into them from what we saw in FP3. Now looking at Bottas's car, which is going out with the full wet still, so we do have a bit of a split of opinion still here.
Yeah, Bottas making his way out onto the circuit. Light goes green now at the end of the pit lane. Zhou is the first driver out. He is on the wets. Then you've got Albon on the intermediates, struggling to quite spot what Hamilton is on at the moment as he leaves the pit lane. Verstappen's on the full wets. Bottas is on the full wets. Intermediates for Fernando Alonso. Wouldn't be surprised if those on the full wets come back in for medias pretty sharpish, to be honest, because if everybody else is on them, unless and the track will be continuing to dry, full wets as well for Daniel Ricciardo. So there aren't many going for the intermediates. Jenny?
Yeah, there's still quite a lot of standing water around, even though it's stopped raining now, and the sky looks relatively bright. Well, the brightest it's been all day, really. But thinking of Alonso, he was the one that went out and did that in FP3, didn't he? Went on to the intermediates quite early, circulated, kept on circulating, and found some decent heat in those tyres eventually. So, yeah, interesting, a split of strategies.
Alonso, Magnussen, Ocon, Schumacher and Albon, the 5 drivers that have gone out on the intermediate tyre. Everybody else has gone out on the full wet tyre. Well, actually, that's not true. Sainz, Leclerc, Perez and Norris are yet to leave the pit lane. Leclerc won't leave the pit lane. So we'll keep an eye out on them when they head out onto the circuit. Alex Albon just trying to put the power down, coming out of turn 10, and now heading flat out on that sort of dry-ish line, closing in pretty rapidly on the Alfa Romeo of Zhou. Zhou sort of backing off to give himself space, but he had no one ahead of him. Hamilton then coming through behind. The spray is a lot less now, actually. We're not going to get to slicks because it's 13 degrees, but I think it will be intermediates for the rest of the session.
Yeah.
Stephanie on the crossover, very close.
Yeah.
Okay, copy, Lewis. We'll still get a lap on the board.
Just about to say, yeah, it does look very much ready for intermediate, so I'm surprised that Moore haven't rolled the dice, but as you say, it's likely that we could see a few of them diving in at the halfway point of the session. That would still give them enough time to fire up the intermediate and get a few laps in, build the temperature and have time to set a good lap at the end.
Yeah, because we've seen some times, I remember Austria, maybe 2020, where the people would pit for intermediates, for new intermediates, but then couldn't get them fired up, and so it didn't really help at all. So whereas some just kept running and Hamilton sliding, coming out of the right-hander of turn 8. And I guess it's tricky with these wet tyres on the full wets, because the sliding doesn't necessarily mean it's too wet almost, you know, because they mean you haven't got the grip, whether that's because it's too wet or too dry.
Yeah, the main difference between the full wet and the intermediate is the severity of the tread blocks. So the full wet has a much taller tread block to displace more water, and the movement that you get as a result of those bigger tread blocks means that it also generates more temperature than the intermediate. The intermediate will be better as soon as the water starts to clear, because it's not going to squirm around as much. It'll hang around in a better temperature window for longer, and you'll have a bigger contact patch with the tarmac than you will with the wet. So that's why you'll see people trying to go as early as they can with the Inter.
Hamilton across the line. He sets a 1 minute 33.0, quicker than Alex Albon by a couple of tenths of a second, and 7 tenths quicker than Zhou. Russell goes quicker than Hamilton, but only by a tenth of a second. Both of those two on the wet tyres. Magnussen is not going to beat them on the intermediates. In fact, he goes slower than Alex Albon on that run. Fernando Alonso opposite, locking his way out of the corner and across the line. 8th quickest currently. Goes fastest, a 1 minute 30.910. Yellow flag in sector 2. So across the line now comes Max Verstappen next up. He is on the full wet tyres. Bottas has gone second quickest, but Verstappen now goes second quickest, 1.6 seconds ahead. And in the wall is Albon. Alex Albon has gone straight on down at the left-hander of turn 6. He hasn't hit it too heavily by the looks of things, so he might be able to reverse out of that.
When you take reverse in these cars, you have to be very, very careful, because the reverse gear itself is very small, very fragile, just to save weight. And he does manage to get it going in reverse, but minimal revs, very smooth on the hand clutch. back it up, and he has made contact with the wall. We can see an indent in those Tech Pro barriers, but they are quite soft. They might change the front nose as a precaution, but here we go. We see him coming into turn 6, gets onto a little bit of the wetter part of the track, locks the front right, and just goes straight on. No grip at all as soon as he starts to lock those front wheels.
Yeah. So Albon off, and Perez is off, and Perez appears to be off a little more severely, and I think that's at turn 3. Yeah. Is it on the way in or the way out? Oh, I think he's tried to... It's almost like he's gone in trying to cut the corner at 4, but has sent it in a bit too much and has been stuck in no man's land. He's trying to get reverse now. He's going to be on the wet, slippery grass, so might be able to get out of this one, Sergio Perez. And this is bad news for the Mexican. He's gone in a bit harder, but might still only be a front wing change if he can haul himself out of the barriers there. We're about to see what happened on the intermediate tyres, and again, it's very similar to Albon, just understeered all straight in. That might be the front left corner as well.
He might get away with it if he can get it back to the pit lane, but yeah, he came in quite hot, and then as soon he started to lock that front right, and he didn't manage to get it unlocked again with what we call cadence braking, where you release pressure to get that front wheel turning again, and stayed locked, and he just didn't scrub off any speed.
Why is it going through?
Just press and hold reverse, select first, and then back to neutrals. Select first gear, keep the clutch held, then neutral, and then press and hold reverse.
So having some trouble selecting reverse gear. What can happen in these cars is if you get a dog-to-dog where the gear is trying to engage but it's not quite going in cleanly, you have to do what the engineer is describing and try and get the gear to move.
We're in reverse.
It doesn't, yeah, I mean reverse, but it doesn't go.
Okay, P1 then.
So he's got it in reverse, but it's not actually going.
I think he's stuck in the wall. I think he might actually be lodged in it with the front wing, and that's why the car can't move back. Because I could hear the revs going, and the reverse gear was on his dash.
So a bit of a combination of stuck in the wall and slippery grass, and there might not be enough traction for him to get out there. And so the red flag is out with 8 minutes on the clock. It should be a fairly swift recovery process for this moment. Verstappen's actually getting... He'd gone almost to the end of the pit lane by the looks of things. So maybe he hadn't gone out on track yet, and then is being wheeled all the way back down to the Red Bull garage. So they've decided to take Verstappen all the way back to the pits, which is quite an interesting one. He's on intermediate tyres, so unless they want to stick him on a new set of inters for the final 8 minutes potentially.
It would mainly just be for temperature. The problem is not so much how old those tyres are, because they could be brand new if he's just coming for a pit stop anyway. The problem is when you're sat down there waiting for Perez's car to be recovered, you're just bleeding temperature from those tyres, and now we're seeing Alfa doing the same with Bottas, wheeling that car back because they'll want to get a nice hot set of inters on, because they do look like new tyres, but yeah, they'll be stone cold by the time this goes green again.
Yeah, the timing of that, Perez going into the wall, not being able to get back out of it, the red flag being thrown, you're absolutely right. They've just put on a decent set of those intermediates and wanted to send him out. He got to the end of the pit lane, and that was exactly the moment that the red flag was put out. So yeah, they pushed those cars back. Some will have a longer push than others. Verstappen right up at that end anyway, so it won't be too damaging for the mechanics that have to get on that car and push it backwards. But Perez just a little beached at the moment, still there in the Tech Pro, and it's fascinating just standing here watching the cars come in when they go out on full wets. Some of them had come in already. The McLarens had come in. Lando Norris, the first of the drivers to come in at McLaren and do a switch onto the intermediates. And there's so many questions being asked of these teams at the moment. They're having to make decisions all the time about what tyre should they go out on, how many laps should they do, how much fuel should they be putting in the car. And I tell you what, the guys at Alfa Romeo just pushing, did you say it was Bottas that they were pushing down back?
Yep.
Towards his garage, which is right at my end of the pit lane at the moment, and them hopefully they had a decent lunch, because they've had quite a long push back to get Bottas back in there. But for a team like Alfa Romeo, as I was saying earlier, this is another great opportunity for them. They never plan their qualifying 3 when it comes to their hospitality. I was talking to one of the girls earlier, because they don't ever really know that they're going to get through to that part of qualifying. They don't want to jinx it. But This is a really crucial opportunity for teams to take now. If they're still in the game, it's a bit like musical chairs, isn't it? You just got to get one of those 10 seats to get yourself through.
Oh, I see Chekhov.
Red flag.
These are some team radio replays.
We're looking at it, and red flag. Okay, so no overtaking.
It doesn't look like a huge accident.
Ricardo.
Daniel, but he's rearranged the barriers, so they'll need to rearrange the barriers. We're boxed this lap.
Alonso.
Okay, so a little bit of time to gain exit of turn 7. Currently still P1 with that lap. Just managing temperatures here and stay positive on the brakes as much as you can.
Little collection of team radios. We don't actually have 8 minutes to go. I think that they didn't stop the clock when they threw the red flag. So when I said 8 minutes, the clock's now gone back up to 9 minutes and 6 seconds. So there we go. There's a little nugget. They were still trying to get Perez's car out of the barriers last we saw. Maybe wedged in there a little in the front wing, because he did go in fairly heavily, and I mean, heavily isn't quite the right term, but with a decent amount of speed.
It was a good old whack, wasn't it? Yeah, and bless him, it took a while for the marshals to convince him, no, you have to get out, sir.
Yeah.
We're not going to push you out, and he looked on quite forlornly, and just having a chat with the marshals now as they tow his car back. So they've got the car out. They'll rearrange the barriers, as the McLaren engineer was saying, and hopefully get underway fairly soon.
So that is possibly Perez out now of Q3, Jenny.
Yeah, he's going to be out of the second part qualifying, isn't he? Because they can't get the car back. So it looks like that's game over. And that is fascinating, isn't it? Because you've got one Ferrari driver who's going to start at the back of the grid. You've got a Red Bull driver who potentially is out in the second part of qualifying, who won't be there to be a buddy for their teammates. So maybe this is the opportunity Mercedes need to give themselves a really decent result. Because if they're always going to end up 5th and 6th behind Ferraris and Red Bulls, you already take out 2 of those cars before we've even got the race underway. And yes, they could come back, but that would be a big ask them to come back and pass the Mercedes. So we're into another chance of a podium for a Mercedes, I think.
Well,
I know I'm getting ahead of myself. No, that's what I do.
I take your point, but I think the more interesting things is like the Alpines. I think they're the ones who could be in for a really, really big haul. If Fernando Alonso keeps up this kind of form, then I think Mercedes will be struggling to get ahead of him. So yeah, I think there's a lot of teams in the mix for what could be a potential 3rd place on the grid, and perhaps even better than that, depending on how everybody else gets on. So red flag is still out. The session will be getting underway fairly shortly, I would suggest. No information yet on when it is going to get resumed, but hopefully, well, not hopefully, but hopefully it will be doing quite soon. A very clear day now over the St. Lawrence Seaway, looking down towards downtown Montreal. The last we saw, Perez's car had just been cleared away from the exit of turn 3. And so racing and qualifying will be getting underway before too long. Verstappen back in the pits. I think, yeah, they wheeled them back because it didn't look like it was going to be a very long stoppage, but it has ended up being so.
Yeah, I mean, we did see the marshals struggling to extricate Perez's car. The nose was really, really wedged into the foam section of the barrier, so they'll have to replace that part of the barrier most likely. FIA saying session will resume at 4:43 local time, so in just over 5 minutes time, or just under 5 minutes time. Not too long to wait. Drivers will be trying to stay warm in those cockpits, and plenty of time for the mechanics to have put the tyres back in the tyre warmers, get them nice and hot again. No issues with going out on a cold set, which is just about the worst thing that you could do in these conditions.
Yeah, and so Perez now is out the back of the circuit.
He's got to go all the way there.
And he's having a chat with he's going into the undergrowth here, Sergio Perez. So he's on the exit of turn sort of 3 and 4, and he wants to get back around to the pit lane. So he's just been going right by the exit of the barriers all the way around, because there's not much gap between the barriers and the sea, basically. So Perez is walking his way back around through the undergrowth. This is a nice little. This might be a meme, you know. This might be a Raikkonen in the desert in Bahrain, or a Hakkinen in the woods at Monza. Maybe. We'll see.
Possibilities are endless.
Exactly.
Yeah. I just noticed that the quali clock has gone down to 9 minutes 0 from 9 minutes and 6 seconds.
So it was 8, then it was 9 minutes.
They're just playing around with it now, aren't they? It's just whatever they fancy.
Exactly. That's number one. Jenny.
Very good. There's a lot of fans here in the grandstands. It's so nice to see Canada back on the calendar. Obviously, we haven't been here for the last 2 years, and an extraordinary amount of fans have poured into the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. The trains were full this morning, and opposite me there are lots of, I think it's an equal split of McLaren and Ferrari fans, I'd suggest. I can't see anyone in green who's supporting Aston Martin, or a couple of Williams fans there as well, but the long march back for Sergio Perez is on, isn't it? He's having to go a very strange way to get back, and I think he'll hope to find a friendly photographer, or maybe someone with a bike that he can steal or something, because this circuit, there's a lot of animals and vegetation around here. You don't really want to go a stomping through them, I can guarantee. Sorry?
If he's hungry.
Oh, what? So he can just pick berries?
Foraging? Yeah, exactly.
I would not suggest doing that the day before a race. In fact, I was speaking... Who was I speaking to the other day? They were saying...
I don't know where this is going.
George Russell. Because they had a really nice team dinner this week. The whole team got together on Wednesday, and I was like, oh, that's your first proper Mercedes driver team dinner, isn't it? Some of the cars are just heading out to line up at the end of the pit lane now on intermediate tyres, from what I can see. Yeah, he was like, oh yeah, I used to do it all the time, but obviously this is my first time doing it as a proper driver. I went for team meals as a reserve driver, and then I'd have curry on a Saturday night. It was great. Don't have curry on a Saturday night once you're a professional F1 driver for Mercedes, was his tip.
No, that's the... Saturday nights are usually the big nights, aren't they, for reserve drivers, Aitken?
I mean, no comment. All I will say is that as reserve driver, you are no longer eligible. No one is eligible to take place of a standard driver once qualifying has begun, because you have to have done one practice session, I think it is. Mm-hmm. So as soon as the green flag goes in quali, all bets are off. You will see all the reserve drivers scurrying out the back of the paddock.
Yeah, exactly. So no investigation, no further investigation for Sainz on his, in inverted commas, unsafe rejoin ahead of Esteban Ocon. So that's all good and all fine. And the session is going to get back underway in, well, over a minute's time, 1 minute and 15. So everybody's gone back out. They're all very keen to be first out on circuit, although they are sitting there with you sit in the garage for ages putting all the temperature into the tyres, and you go and sit at the end of the pit lane for a couple of minutes in the rain.
The one I don't understand there is Verstappen, who's gone about approximately the grand total of 5 metres from his garage to be at the back of that queue, out of the tyre warmers, so losing temperature, and he's gained nothing in terms of track position. But anyway, I'm sure they have their reasons. But track position is important because of yellow flags, red flags. The more cars you have in front of you, the more chance your lap's going to get messed up by someone in front of you. And track position, they're all bunching up into that final chicane, even though the race director will constantly tell them that they're not allowed to do that. That is just what happens with the accordion effect. And the more you have to slow down at the back of that train, the more temperature you lose before you start your lap and head into that first corner.
So session back underway, 8 minutes and 20 seconds on the clock as they make their way out of the pit lane and rejoin the circuit. Max Verstappen heading out in the Red Bull. Alonso still in the pits, Ocon still in the pits. Ricciardo and Norris didn't actually have a lap time on the board, and Leclerc won't be setting a lap time. So we're looking for 4 drivers to be eliminated along with Charles Leclerc, and not making it through to Q3. Both Haas is in with a shout. The order at the moment is Alonso, Verstappen, Sainz, Ocon, Bottas the top 5, Russell, Hamilton, Perez, Albon, Schumacher the top 10.
Dry line starting to appear.
Hey, firm copy.
I would suggest a drier line is not equivalent to a dry line.
Yeah,
You think we're going slicks?
I just wonder, because it is still very cold, as I'm sure Jenny will attest, but it is getting noticeably dry, a lot less standing water. There's still quite big puddles around, but on the dry line, even as we're looking at an aerial shot of the back straight there, I would say that looks almost dry on the dry line, which is just because of how much air is being displaced by these cars. We're now seeing that
positively balmy. It's 13 degrees, which it feels like 10 degrees warmer than it was earlier. It's not, but it feels very much warmer.
You haven't had to find some gloves for your hands then?
No, and your team never came through for me with a...
I tried my very best. I did what I could.
Enough.
I'm sorry. Now we see Russell starting his lap. Still a big puddle on the inside at the apex of turn 1. No such trouble at turn 2. Takes a nice tight line. Going into turn 3 with this awkward braking zone where Perez came unstuck. Again, a little bit of a dry line coming through, using all the curve on the right and the left, getting as close to the grass as you dare. I wonder if they are getting back to full throttle now through turn 5, going into turn 6, another tricky braking zone. He's 1/10 up on the fastest of Fernando Alonso so far, but Sainz going even quicker behind him.
Everybody's out on the intermediate tyres for these last 6 minutes of Q2. Verstappen is 8/10 quicker in the first sector compared to Alonso's best lap time, as George Russell comes through 8 and 9 now and down towards the hairpin at turn 10. Onto the brakes, into the right-hander. Russell's 9/10 up on Alonso after the middle sector. Sainz is 1.3 seconds up, but it's now 8/10 up because Magnussen's just gone fastest on a 30.6. 3/10 ahead of Alonso, but it is Verstappen who's putting in the big lap here. The sound you can hear is, well, Albon's just gone second fastest in the Williams. Russell is coming through the chicane on the power now, out across the line. Pretty smooth from Russell. And he goes from 8th place up to, well, Hamilton actually goes quickest, so Hamilton went through first and does a 30.0. Russell goes 1.1 seconds quicker than Hamilton. Next through it's Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. He goes quickest, 3/10 quicker than Russell, but here comes Verstappen, and he goes 1.4 seconds quicker than anyone else.
Wow, big lap from Verstappen. And Alonso not looking too bad behind him as well. He's only 1.2 seconds down from Verstappen across Sector 2, which would put him P2 if he manages to hold that pace to the end. But yeah, lots of people improving a lot now. You can see the cars have a lot more purpose when the drivers are pitching them into the corner, and that's just a sign of how much extra grip they're finding out there now. The seconds are being locked off of the lap times.
So Verstappen is quickest at the moment. Across the line comes Fernando Alonso, and he goes second quickest with 4 minutes and 22 seconds left on the clock. Magnussen coming out of the final corner now in the Haas, and he doesn't improve on this low, does he? Goes second quickest. I didn't think he was going to improve there, but he goes a second slower than Verstappen. So really good lap from Kevin Magnussen. Third is Alonso, fourth is Sainz. Scratch that. Fourth is Alex Albon in the Williams. Sainz is fifth. Russell, Schumacher, Ocon, Bottas, Hamilton the top 10. Eliminated at the moment, Ricciardo and Joe. Norris is in the pits still.
Must have a problem.
Yeah, we don't know why Norris is in the pits, do we? He's in the pits along with Perez, who's in the wall, and Leclerc is in the pits. So there's only two drivers who are sort of in danger here. So for whatever reason, Norris is in the pits. And Verstappen now goes quicker than Sainz again by 3/10. Sainz had gone quicker than Verstappen by a second, and then Verstappen went quicker than that. Schumacher goes ahead of Magnussen, so a quick lap from Mick Schumacher. Verstappen and Russell are improving here, and this is a real old mix-up to see who's going to, because I think Norris has left the pits now. Norris has left the pits now. He's going to be in a big rush, or he's going to be up against it to get temperature to those tyres. He's going to get basically one lap, right? Maybe two.
Yeah, it's going to be very tough for him to get up to speed that quickly, but it is a lot drier than we've seen before. Didn't that red flag break? I don't know if there was wind or something, but it's clearly blown away a lot of the dampness. And Alonso, the first time that we've seen someone actually go off of the racing line to get water onto his tyres to try and cool them down because they're overheating now.
Yeah, absolutely. Norris was complaining of power unit problems earlier on in the session, so we'll see what the McLaren driver can do. Jenny? Well, he's just almost had a moment at turn 9, but he's carried on going. Jenny?
Yeah, he's going to have to push hard, isn't he? He came in just after the session started, really, and I thought it was just to change tyres, but then clearly they've had issues. It's not gone out, so yeah, a lot of pressure on Norris now to perform.
So, 2 minutes and 10 seconds on the clock. At the moment, it's Schumacher, Bottas and Norris, the 3 drivers that would be eliminated. Another quick lap from Max Verstappen to go 1.1 seconds ahead of Russell. Russell improved on that last lap. 2 minutes to go in the session. Schumacher goes up to 5th quickest. Zhou is there in 6th quickest at the moment. Albon's there in 9th. We're getting Ricciardo now over to 6th place. I think we're going to get some... We're going to get 1 or 2 surprises in the final part of qualifying. There's almost no doubt about that with Perez and Leclerc out and Norris in trouble. Norris splashes through the puddle on the apex of turn 1, splashes through the puddle on the apex of turn 2, and then slides his way through the exit of turn 2. It looks cool, but not sure it's super quick from Norris here.
He is going to get 2 laps in here, cross the line with enough time to finish this one and then to start the final lap before the checkered flag comes down, and he's going to need it because he's looking a bit scrappy here. 1.5 seconds off the pace of Verstappen in just the first sector, and these conditions are very, very tough to jump into because we've got a bit of a half and half situation with dry patches where you're going to have tons of grip, it feels like, on those inters, and then you'll cross into, I don't know, a bit of a tree-covered patch of the track or a river crossing the road, and suddenly you'll have 0 grip again, and you have to kind of jump from dry patch to dry patch. So he's got to take in as much as he can on this lap now, and he's got that Ocon bearing down on him from behind, probably getting furious because he's going to have his lap bulked a bit here.
Yeah, Ricciardo's on a pretty pacey lap here as well. Norris has backed out of it to set himself up for his final run. Hamilton is in 11th now, so Hamilton, Albon, and Norris are the 3 drivers that will be eliminated. Mick Schumacher goes 3rd fastest in the Haas. Russell's just started a flying lap. Alonso is flying in the middle of sector 2. Here comes Ocon out of the final corner. Ricciardo goes 4th quickest, so not enough to go to the top of the times, but he's up into 4th place, and Norris pits. So Norris must still have trouble. So at the moment it's Hamilton and Albon, the 2 drivers that will be eliminated. We're only going to lose 2 from this second part of qualifying. Alonso here, whoa, huge slide as he comes out of the final chicane, keeps it together, comes across the line, and the Spaniard goes quickest, a 1 minute 24.848. Fernando Alonso to the top of the times. Bottas goes up into 7th place. Magnussen goes up into 5th. But where is Hamilton and Albon? What are their lap times doing? Albon is not flying. Hamilton's doing all right. He's improving at the moment. Bottas has taken the flag in 8th place. Zhou is improving too. Ocon is the driver on the bubble in 10th place now. He's on a lap. George Russell in the Mercedes out across the line. Zhou goes up into 5th place. George Russell, he goes up into 2nd, a 10th slower than Fernando Alonso. Hamilton across the line and it's 4th. So Ocon is pushed out now. Bottas has taken the checkered flag. Albon only goes 11th. So he doesn't make it into Q3, misses out by 7/100ths of a second. So it's going to be Bottas or Ocon that get eliminated along with Alex Albon. Ocon is coming down the back straight now. Bottas has already taken the checkered flag, is 10th quickest currently. Ocon is getting onto the brakes, into the final 2 corners, into the right, into the left. His teammate Alonso is 2nd quickest because Verstappen has come across the line to go a 2nd quicker than anyone else. Ocon cuts the timing beam, and it is enough to get him into 8th place. Bottas eliminated, 11th on the grid. 12th for Alex Albon, 13th Perez, 14th Norris, 15th Leclerc. Schumacher through in 6th place. Zhou through in 7th place. Alonso through in 2nd place.
Oh, breathless stuff that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The track improving a huge amount in the last 10 minutes of that session. And I think it's quite likely we're going to see slicks in this final run. But
even with that water at turn 1,
that's just the thing, isn't it? It's a very tough call because the middle part and the end part of the lap look like they're almost completely dry on the line.
Box this lap, please. I'm sorry.
That was Norris's radio from earlier on being told to come into the pits.
But yeah, it's as you say, the turn 1, turn 2, that you've still got a massive puddle on the apex of turn 1 and a decent amount of water just hanging around. So would it be worth taking the slick and sliding around in the first sector, just surviving that and getting onto the drier part of the circuit where you can really gain the time back?
Well, Verstappen, Alonso, Russell, Sainz, Hamilton, the top 5. Schumacher, Zhou, Ocon, Magnussen and Ricciardo, the top 10. And Q3 will start in 5.5 minutes' time. I wouldn't say that pole position is anybody's precisely, because Verstappen does seem to be absolutely flying. But if they don't time it, you know, exactly right, if he doesn't get that last lap in or the lap in at the right time, there is a shot of an Alonso pole or a Russell pole or a I don't think any one pole. I think I'd eat my what was it called, a toque. I'd eat my toque if Zhou got on pole, for example, or Schumacher or Magnussen. But there's a lot of contenders here.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Verstappen, when he puts a lap together, he's clear of the field. I mean, Sainz, for whatever reason, is not able to get the lap time out of that Ferrari. Obviously, Leclerc's not in it anymore. Perez is not in it. And Mercedes, they're looking better, but still not able to compete. So all he has to do is get around and do a half-decent lap at the right time when the track is at its driest at the end. But that's much simpler said than done. Behind him, though, the battle's massively close. Alpine looking really strong, Haas looking good, Mercedes, as I said, are up there in the mix. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Jenny.
I love watching this qualifying session because I'm with quite a lot of the teams, and the excitement and enthusiasm they have when their driver's done a good job is just so joyful. It's lovely to see, and seeing Alonso just fishtailing the car around, it was squirming underneath him, and then he manages to get the second fastest lap, and the guys for Alpine were just delighted to see it. It was kind of extraordinary to ride out their emotions with them in a way. I feel really privileged to see it, but I have to say a big congratulations to Guan Yu Zhou, who has had a phenomenal qualifying session. Out-qualified Bottas, who's out in Q2 for Alfa Romeo.
So
He's through...
Verstappen. Verstappen that far off, it's huge.
That's Hamilton being told how far off he is off Verstappen. But yeah, Zhou, absolutely, Jenny.
Yeah, and he's running the same aero as Bottas.
Here he is.
Team ready?
We are Q3. Good job, John. Fantastic. Q3.
Let's go, boys! Let's go! We are always there. Thank you, guys. Tough one. Wow, my heart is calling. Thank you.
It's not over yet, Joe. Come on. You need to do one more.
Took's off to him, though. Yeah, I was talking to his driver advisor earlier, and he was saying that it feels like the first time they've really got a chance to do something decent. Reliability has been a big woe for Zhou, and last time out they had to retire the car when he was in a really healthy position in Baku, so he'll be looking for longevity. They've got upgrades coming, but not quite yet, so fingers crossed they can go out there and have a phenomenal session. But what a place to be, what a time to be there as well. The opportunities are huge going into this final part of qualifying, with big scalps, Norris, Perez and Leclerc, and Bottas for that matter, going out in that session.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interested to see what happens in this final part of qualifying. Zhou, it's nice to see Zhou doing well, because he always looked quite exciting in his first year of F2. I think he finished, I can't remember where in the championship, but sort of maybe top 5, top 6, and you thought...
Seventh, maybe?
And you thought, okay, this guy's solid, and then maybe sort of won the first couple of races of the next season, and then never kind of kicked on. So it was a weird one, because the talent sort of seemed to be there, and then it kind of faded a little, and then comes into Alfa, and he's never been too bad compared to Bottas, but last couple of races have been pretty strong, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you have to say, comparing him against the other rookies, he's not coming in with as much fanfare as some of these guys, but he's done a very, very good job, I think. Very solid. Seems to be getting stronger all the time. And now we're just seeing the first cars going out to Q at the pit exit line. Indeed, they are going out on inters, at least Russell was, for this first stab at it.
Fernando Alonso's last pole position was 10 years ago now, at the 2012 German Grand Prix at Hockenheim. So there we go. If he manages to get a pole here, which I think is a bit ambitious, but he's an ambitious chap, It was almost 10 years ago now. I presume that was in sort of July, and we're in June, aren't we? So not quite 10 years. But was that the Fernando is faster than you one? I think that might have been 2012 Hockenheim. Anyway, he only had 2 poles for McLaren, Alonso. I know he was only there a year, but he spent a lot of time at McLaren. Only 2 poles in Monza and Monaco in 2007. Anyway, that's 2010 was Fernando is faster than you. My apologies. Anyway, enough of the past. Here comes the present with the final part of qualifying about to get underway. As Jack Aitken says, everybody heading out seemingly on the intermediate tyres at the moment. And what run plans will we see? Will they just pound around? Because normally Q3 you do out lap, push lap, in lap, rinse and repeat. Whereas here, maybe they'll just go around. Maybe some of them will fancy taking some new tyres at some point halfway through the session, maybe.
Yeah, I think they will have to. Or put it this way: even if they're not going to go for slicks because it's still too wet in places, they are going to be burning up those inters a lot quicker than they were at the start of this qualifying session. So it would make a lot of sense for them to come in and get a fresh set if they've got some left. Remember as well. To do for the last couple of laps of Q3. So it could be a similar sort of run plan to what we normally see.
So 11 minutes and 15 seconds on the clock. Everybody is out on track now. The top 10, which is a reminder of Verstappen, Alonso, Russell, Sainz, Hamilton, Schumacher, Joe, Ocon, Magnussen and Ricciardo. And the first laps will start coming in a moment. It's been in the last 12 Canadian Grand Prix, only in 2014 have Vettel or Hamilton not taken pole position. Surely there will be a new pole sitter today as Hamilton hit a big old puddle and had a nice little slide. It is almost bone dry, isn't it, on this run down the back straight?
Now, on the straights it generally does seem to be, but there's still quite a few corners where it's a little bit of dampness just in the wrong places, so it's just not ready for slick right now. Could be at the end of the session, but it'll be too late by then.
Right, Hamilton across the line. He is the first driver on track, gets onto the brakes and turns into the left-hander of turn 1, the slippiest part of the circuit. And then on the power, coming through the right-hander of 2, a little sheen on the rubber as the spray kicks up from the rear of the Mercedes, and then he's onto the drier parts of the circuit. 10 minutes left on the clock. Hamilton now coming towards turn 6 through the first sector. It is Russell who's quicker than Hamilton by 0.3 of a second in the first third of the lap. Verstappen is just starting his flying lap now on the intermediate tyres, coming down towards turn 1, and then Alonso, Ocon and Ricciardo starting their laps as Hamilton comes through the middle sector. And it's really fantastic to watch these cars in these conditions, I have to say. Hamilton through the middle sector at 26.9. Verstappen is quicker than Russell in sector 1, only by 1/10 of a second, and Russell is 2/10 up on Hamilton after the middle sector. So I think that in total is about half a second here. Russell's advantage on Hamilton. You can hear the car scraping along the ground as he comes down into the chicane at the end of the lap. Touches the curb on the right-hand side, comes out across the line, and the benchmark time from Hamilton, a 1:24.360. Russell is following him across the line, and he goes 0.3 quicker then. So Russell 0.3 quicker than Hamilton. Verstappen is going quicker though. Magnussen slots into 3rd place. The sound you can hear is Verstappen coming towards the final couple of corners. He's done the fastest middle sector, and he is comfortably quicker than Russell in that middle sector. Takes a lot of curve on the right-hand side as he turns into the final chicane, and Verstappen goes quicker. 1.3 seconds.
A lot quicker. Yeah, that's a big gap. That's what we were talking about. When he gets a lap together, he's well clear of the field. Because even now, Sainz coming across the line 1.1 seconds down in P2. See what Alonso can do. He's not looked too great through the sectors. He's only P3, 123.8, 1.14 off of Verstappen's time. So yeah, big gap.
Alonso gets into 3rd place in the Alpine, ahead of the 2 Mercedes, and just 0.03 slower than his compatriot Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. Mick Schumacher is 6th, Kevin Magnussen is 7th, Ocon is 8th, Joe is 9th, Daniel Ricciardo is 10th because he had a big moment at turn 6, Ricciardo.
Yeah, it looks like he just started to turn in and the rear just let go, either because he got onto a slightly wetter part of the track or there was some rear locking, wasn't quite sure. On board with George Russell now through turns 3 and 4, and a big old slide from the rear as he gets on the power, taking a lot of curb, and you can see some sparks flying from the bottom of his car as he gets on the loud pedal, and that's what causes the rear to jump out on him. Now Alonso going purple in sector 1, so he's taken a lap to get going, but now he is well and truly up to pace. Not a bad middle sector as well, so we'll see where he comes out. Sainz about to finish his second lap. Let's see if he can get a little bit closer to Verstappen.
Schumacher's gone second quickest. Sainz now goes second fastest. He does go 2 tenths away from Verstappen. Another slide out of the final corner from Alonso, who, as you say, is on a good run. He slots into third place now. What's Verstappen doing? On that last lap, he did a 23.6, so he did another push lap, Verstappen, but was ended up a second slower. So Verstappen quickest, 2 tenths to Sainz in second, 4 tenths to Alonso in third, 8 tenths to Schumacher fourth. Then Russell and Hamilton basically haven't done they're doing a cool down, basically, by the looks of things, Hamilton and Russell. Whether that's intentional or not, no, they didn't. The mini sectors, they didn't start the lap strongly, so that seems to be intentional. For
maybe they're boxing. Let's see what Hamilton does now.
Actually, Russell's pushing.
Russell is pushing, yeah.
Here he comes across the line. Does he improve? No, he doesn't. So he was pushing, but not improving, basically, Russell. And Hamilton did pit for the new set, as you say. So the first driver to come into the pits, Hamilton. Magnussen follows him in from 7th place. Ricciardo is getting a better lap in this time. Zhou now coming down towards the final corner. And he comes through it and comes across the line. 24.5 last time, and it's a 25.0 for Zhou this time. So no improvement. And you're right, it is for some of them. It is turning into a out-lap push, in-lap kind of vibe.
Yeah, they're getting 2 laps out of these tyres, it looks like. And then after that, Verstappen wasn't improving, so he boxed as well. We saw Russell doing the same, and a big lock-up now as we ride on board with Hamilton into turn 8. Going onto that bridge still seems quite low grip and damp. But, yeah, a lot of them coming in now. Sainz in, Schumacher in as well, Ocon, all boxing for a fresh set of those Inter tyres.
Jenny Gao.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just standing here watching them all come in. Ricciardo, the latest driver to come in, and they've managed to dry out some of the pit boxes using the fans and the heaters that they have down here. Schumacher was a long hold, though. It was the rear left that was a problem for them. They stacked both cars down at Haas as well, which is something that they're probably not that used to doing, but they've done it now and they've got the cars out. That's George Russell coming into the pits as well. It's definitely that time where they're all coming in, putting on a fresh set of the intermediate green banded Pirelli tyres and going back out again. But both Haas's through to the third part of qualifying. That is tremendous. Tukes off.
It's going to be an interesting balance here, not to go out on the intermediates, get them going, and it slicks for Russell. Russell fancies this. He's going out on the slick tyres, and he is going big Gamble Town for George Russell here.
I'm surprised at that, because you'd expect it from maybe one of the Haas's or Zhou or Ricciardo, but you know, because they've not got as much to lose. But this is do or die from George.
There's a big puddle at turn 1. I'm so scared for that puddle. Less than 4 minutes to go. Russell is the only driver. Alonso and Ocon haven't left the pit lane yet. They could emerge on a set of slick tyres, but if not, then it is going to be just the two of them that will be out on the soft compound with 3 minutes and 40 seconds left on the clock. Verstappen starts a lap now on the intermediate tyre. Russell is on his out lap. Magnussen is 400ths up after the middle sector. And now coming in towards turns 6 and 7. Russell is trying to keep out of everybody's way, but ultimately has to stay on the dry line. He's not going particularly quickly, Russell. I know he's on an out lap, but tyre temperature is going to be quite important. Verstappen is flying, though, through the middle sector. Magnussen is only a tenth of a second away from Verstappen through here. This is going to be really fascinating to see what Russell can do. Yeah, it's a big gamble.
It's going to be last across the line again. Everybody's going to have to nail that final lap, because everybody's just going faster. And Yeah, Russell needs to get speed up and put some temperature into those tyres as much as he can, and he's going to have to crawl through this first sector, just survive it basically, where it's still damp, and then the rest of the circuit is not as bad as that.
It's so interesting that he's the only one to have done it. Magnussen goes into third place, a 1 minute 22.9. Max Verstappen, though, is about to send in another large lap from the championship leader and reigning champion across the line now, and it is a 1 minute 21.6, 1.3 seconds again ahead of Carlos Sainz, and Russell's off. Russell is off at turn 2 and rejoins the circuit. He's got a bit of damage on the rear wing, and that gamble has not paid off for George Russell. Well, I mean, you can get around, to be honest, and get to the lap and start another one, but is he just going to hit that huge splash of water in the first corner? Because the problem is there's no dry line there either. He got around 1 okay, and then 2 just understeered, and away it went onto the grass.
World's slowest spin. Agonizing. Yeah, he got through turn 1, which is actually the wetter of the 2 corners, turns 1 and 2, but he just went a little bit wide through turn 2, got onto the white pit exit line, and the rear just came around. That was it. So it's so treacherous on those painted wet lines. Yeah, just locking the inside front as he tried to slow down for turn 2. Just a bit too ambitious in that part of the second. Yeah, like I said, you just had to survive that, but obviously still treacherous on slicks in those damp conditions.
Yeah. Jenny?
You get the feeling this is Russell's call, don't you? You get the feeling that he's gone into the garage and just go, come on, give me a set of the softs and I'll do it. And a gung-ho approach. Let's see how costly it is.
Yeah, he is currently 6th quickest, George Russell. Hamilton goes 2nd fastest, 1.2 seconds back from Verstappen. The final laps are going to be coming in a moment. Verstappen on pole. Russell is still out there, so we'll see. I think he's going to go for it once more, Russell.
He's going so slowly. He's just bleeding temperature from those tyres. It's the last thing that he needs going into that first sector.
Here comes Hamilton, 40 seconds left on the clock, coming into the left-hander of turn 6. First sector for Hamilton this time is a 23.6, a couple of tenths down on Verstappen, and he's now heading down towards 8 and 9. Zhou very quick on the run down towards the first corner. Little puff of water, a little splash of water as Hamilton comes underneath the bridge and through 8 and 9. He's looking quite reasonable here. Ocon's about to come across the line in the Alpine, and he goes up into 9th place, so not particularly remarkable. Russell is across the line now to start another lap on these soft tyres. Hamilton is sliding his way out of the hairpin. Checkered flag is out. Verstappen is going quickly again. Sainz is improving. I don't think Hamilton is particularly improving here, but he's 2nd on the grid as it stands. Sainz has done a quicker first sector than Max Verstappen. Now, Verstappen's advantage in the first sector hasn't been as great as the rest of the lap, and we've seen it over the weekend that, especially in the final sector, the Red Bull is strong, but we'll keep an eye on that one. Here comes Russell through sector 1, and he's nowhere. He's 10 seconds off. Russell's done.
So it's now just up to the inter-runners. Everyone's improving as we'd expect on the last lap. Verstappen coming through the final chicane now, a big lump of curb through the first one, not as much in the second, so he can get the power down. He's coming across to take the checkered line, and where's this going to put him?
So it's a 1 minute 21.299 for Max Verstappen. Sainz isn't quite going to get there, I don't think. Oh, big slide coming out of the final corner, and Sainz gets 2nd. Oh, he misses out by 0.8 of a second in the end. Verstappen surely will be on pole position here. We've got a few more improvements coming in. Mick Schumacher through the final corner, out across the line in the Haas. He remains in 6th place. Fernando Alonso in the Alpine. He's going to improve. Can he improve from 5th? It's 2nd on the grid for Fernando Alonso. Alonso will start on the front row for the Canadian Grand Prix. The Alpine team are over the moon. Verstappen will be at the front, but Fernando Alonso will be right alongside him, crucially ahead of Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. 4th on the grid for Hamilton. The Hasses 5th and 6th for Magnussen and Schumacher. Pretty sure that equals their best ever qualifying result. 7th for Esteban Ocon, 8th for George Russell, 9th for Daniel Ricciardo, 10th for Zhou. A 2nd pole of the season for Verstappen.
Well, not bad then, but it was tricky conditions, mate.
That was, yeah, I won't say miles class, but you were on top of that all session. Nice job.
Yeah, well done, mate. Very good effort, difficult conditions. Alonso P2, Sainz P3.
That's Christian Horner letting Verstappen know the results, the rest of the top 3. So the top 10, once again, Verstappen, Alonso, Sainz, Hamilton, Magnussen the top 5, Schumacher, Ocon, Russell, Ricciardo and Zhou the top 10. Charles Leclerc will start at the back of the grid. We will get the Grand Prix underway tomorrow afternoon. You can hear that on tomorrow evening. You can hear that on 5 Live and the BBC Sport website and wherever. We're going to record the Checker Flag podcast for all the reaction a little bit later on for you this evening. But right now on Sports Extra, we're going to be heading to the Gulf and joining Sarah Mulkerins.